Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Abigail Grazel, and I am the Participant Services Coordinator at InterExchange. I am joined today by my colleague, Tammin Nicholson. Tammin, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Tammin Nicholson. I am the Program Manager for the Career Training USA program at InterExchange.
Great. We're really excited to bring this webinar series to you. It's the third of 10 webinars that we'll be conducting this spring. The series of webinars will cover everything from searching for internships in the US to creating cover letters and resumes, and then LinkedIn profiles and all aspects of pulling together an international internship application, sorry. For those of you who are familiar with InterExchange or Career Training USA, we are a nonprofit organization based in New York City, and our mission is to promote cross-cultural exchange for students overseas to come to the United States, and also for students in the US to go overseas and partake in programs abroad. The Career Training USA program, we particularly work with students who have internships and are seeking to come to the United States to do an internship or a traineeship. Clearly, with the pandemic, there has been a lot less opportunity for people to come and travel and experience internships in person or in other countries. But we know there is still a lot of interest in these types of programs. So we want to provide the resources that we can during this time while you're thinking of interning, but not necessarily able to come to the US quite yet. So we hope today this topic will help you as you're thinking about starting your internship application and coming to the US maybe in the next few months once things start to open up. And then a bit of housekeeping before I turn it over to Tammin to begin the presentation. Everyone is muted. If you have any questions, please type it into the chat box. And we'll read them off as they come in if they're pertaining to that portion of the presentation. We do have a break about halfway through where we will answer some questions, and then again at the end of the presentation, if we have some time, we can do a little bit of question and answer as well. So if you're thinking of something, just go ahead and type it into the chat box, and we can address those and talk about those during some of those breaks. And if you do join us a little late or you have to leave early, this session is recorded, and everyone who's registered will get a recording to this session. So don't worry, you'll be able to review everything again. And with that, Tammin, I'll turn it over to you to get started with the presentation.
Awesome, thank you so much. So like Abby said, today's presentation is about the midway point of our career guidance series. We've talked about some foundational elements to preparing your internship application, and today we're going to focus on the actual search components for searching for internships in the United States and how to go about that potentially daunting process. So just an outline of what we'll talk about today. We'll start with defining what an internship is. I know many of you are probably aware of what an internship is, but just so we're all on the same page, we'll then talk about why interning in the United States versus interning domestically or even interning in another country. Then we'll focus on the internship search timeline, some internship search preparation tips, and then the second half of the presentation will be specifically internship search tips, some resources you can use and some ways to kind of point you in the direction to keep yourself organized and finding that ideal internship. As Abby mentioned, we'll do a question and answer period at the end, but we will pause throughout just to make sure that if I say anything or if my sound cuts out, that everyone's kind of up to speed with the content of the presentation. So with that, what is an internship? I think we all know, or at least we've all heard, that an internship adds great value to a resume. But we wanted to start out by defining, what an internship is, especially in the context of an internship in the U.S., because it might be a little bit different versus your home country in the United States. So an internship basically has four characteristics that would define an internship. And the first is that it's practical and hands-on. An internship is a short-term work-based learning experience, can be offered by many different organizations across many different industries, but the important characteristic is that you get a chance to actually dive in and see what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. Internships can last from several months to a full year based on J-1 visa regulations, but another important characteristic of internships is that they're an extended period of time so that you can really refine and remember and learn those skills. Internships may include financial compensation or school credit. So that compensation could be financial, but in some cases the compensation is just the learning value you get or the ability to put that experience towards academic credits. Internships are different than volunteer work in that sense that there is a little bit more of a transaction where you're not just giving up your labor, you're learning as you do spend time with the organization. And then students who are doing internships can also gain valuable work experience and explore a career path through that experience. So there's value and there's something you can build off of, as internships are stepping stones to future career opportunities. So now that we've defined what we're talking about today when we talk about searching for internships, why intern in the United States? And I think many of you are probably familiar with what internship or professional development experience might entail in your home country. But we're going to take a further look today about why you might want to do an internship in the United States and how that would propel your career. On the next slide, we have responses that we've received from interns when we do our interviews to gauge their rationale for applying for the J-1 visa program. And the responses do vary, but these are basically the 6 areas that we tend to find that students tell us why they're seeking to do an internship in the United States. Many participants want to gain international experience simultaneously while they're gaining their knowledge and skills. So it's a bit of ability to multitask. So they have that international experience and they also are able to accumulate skills and knowledge to help them in their future career. But also because so many US workplaces are known for their dynamic and innovative work layout. Maybe it's an open floor plan, or maybe that's where the headquarters of the company might be. Participants want to have that ability to access that atmosphere and that network. And there are some key organizations that are looking for international interns specifically to help diversify their staff, their ideas, the projects that they're working on. And this increases the ability for interns to have more of a driving component in the company's organizational goals and an organizational mission because of that. Because the companies are actively seeking international interns and those diverse experiences. Also, every country has a different process of how things work, regardless of what the field is. So being exposed to new technologies and new methodologies by coming to the United States, a lot of interns tell us this helps build their marketability when they return home and start looking for jobs or maybe other internships or a postgraduate degree or something of that nature. Also, by doing an internship in the United States, a lot of participants tell us this increases their English speaking and their intercultural communication skills. Whether this is because they have to practice business English in the office amongst their colleagues or because they're engaging with other Americans outside the office, many individuals want to come to the US to learn more about the culture while they have the opportunity to live and train here. And lastly, many participants want to come to the United States to become independent, to become more confident. It takes a lot of guts and initiative to move to the United States or just to begin interning in another country that is completely different from your own culture and where you grew up and where you went to school, whether it's finding an apartment or navigating public transport or becoming more proficient in the language. These are all important soft skills that employers seek, and participants are able to build up those soft skills and that independence by doing an internship in the US. I wanted to stop here and just pause on 2 of these anecdotes because I think it's really interesting. These are 2 students from the same university in Italy who both decided to come to the United States and train in 2 different fields for 2 different reasons. So Eduardo on the top, based on what he provided in his statement, he really wanted to come to the United States to kind of interact with people and learn his design skills and have a little bit more of interaction with clients and being part of a team and building his network. Where Beatrice, her main focus was coming to the United States to have a stepping stone to launch her career, to kind of build up her resume and have that experience and set her resume apart when she returned to Italy. So two students who come to the United States, but their primary goals for having that international internship are a little bit different, even though both of them built their network, both of them built their resume, but their main reason for doing an internship overseas was a little bit different. So before we go any further, one important step as you prepare for an internship in the United States is to know the visa rules. And if you attended our first session about a month or so ago, a lot of this is familiar, but I just want to take one slide here to pause and talk about some of this, because it is important to know what you can and can't do on an intern visa. So in order to intern in the United States on a J1 visa, you must be currently enrolled full-time or have graduated from university in the last 12 months, so 12 months before your internship start date. So if you recently graduated, you probably need to submit your application to InterExchange about 10 months after your graduation, just so you have enough time to apply for your visa, apply for sponsorship, things of that nature. Your internship must also be directly related to your field of study. So even if you have a professional background in that particular field, your internship must be related to your coursework. The internship program is meant to bridge academic theory and practical knowledge, so it's important that you are able to put in place the things you learned in the classroom during your internship. If you have 1 year of full-time work experience, or if you've graduated more than a year ago, the trainee program might be a better fit for you. In InterExchange, we also sponsor trainee visas. This presentation is a little bit more focused on internships, but if you do have questions about the trainee program, please contact us afterwards and we can talk a little bit more about those regulations and how they differ slightly. While you're in the United States, it's also important that you have exposure to US culture in and out of the workplace. So for that reason, your internship must include the ability to interact and to understand cultures and to assist. Your host should be assisting you with providing culturally rich experiences and ensuring that exchange takes place. So you're not coming to the US to simply sit at a desk for 6 months and send the same emails and not talk to anyone. It's important that there's exchange happening in and out of the workplace. So there's a reason that you've traveled across the globe for this experience, and we want to make sure that you're fully immersed in US culture while you're here. Your host must also provide a training plan that they develop that lays out what training they're going to provide. So InterExchange as a sponsor, we're responsible for reviewing all aspects of this training plan to make sure that the internship meets the goals that you've lined out and that you are learning different business practices that will help you in the future, and that you're also engaged with local culture, and that you're not just coming to fill an unskilled labor or casual labor position or clerical work, that you're actually getting the professional development that this program is designed for. And a couple other InterExchange rules is that the host company must have at least 5 full-time employees on site. So again, that you have cultural exchange and that you have someone to train you. If there's less than 5 full-time employees, it's really hard. If people go on vacation or if someone's sick, who is going to be there giving you that supervision and giving you that training while you're in the United States. A big question that comes up quite often from participants is, what is the typical search timeline? So this is a really common question, and while the answer is it varies, we did compile some data from 2019 and 2020 interviews with prospective applicants, and you can see these responses here on this slide. A majority, nearly 2/3 of participants, spent more than 3 months searching and planning for an internship in the United States. So as you can see, it's really important to start early. If you are planning on a summer 2021 internship in the US, definitely start looking now if you haven't already. But even if you're planning for the fall of this year, even 2022, it's not a bad idea to at least start the preparation and make it a little bit easier on yourself. It is possible to find an internship in less than 1 month, and we can see that a small percentage of people are able to do that. But international internships in particular can be a little bit more difficult to secure. There's maybe additional work needed to establish contact with the host company, to design a successful training plan that meets your requirements and the host needs and program regulations that have been put forward by the US government or InterExchange. There might be some paperwork from your school if you're seeking academic credit, and then there's the visa process and actually going to the US Embassy to get a visa. So it can be a lengthy process, and that's why we do recommend giving yourself as much time as possible. And on the next slide, we have our recommended search timeline. So we're going to spend a bulk of this webinar discussing tips for the second graphic on this, or the second graphic on this timeline is where we'll spend most of our time, but the actual search and identification stages is really important, but we can't get to that stage without first discussing search preparation. So we'll spend a bit of time going through the slides about how to prepare for your internship search. We'll talk about some best practices, and then we'll dive into the actual search tips. But as a reminder, like Abby said, we have other webinars that we have done in the past couple weeks and that will be coming up later that discuss writing cover letters, preparing for interviews, and other more specific aspects of applying for an internship in the US with some US companies. Okay, so search preparation. One of the most important aspects for preparing for your internship is defining what your goals are. What are the goals of this internship? What kind of internship is going to be best for you? What are your objectives? What is your motivation for seeking an internship overseas? What type of learning experience would you like to carry out? In what type of context? What skills are you seeking to develop or implement? What type of company structure you're looking for? All these questions are really important to determining the best internship fit for you and what's going to help you the most in your learning objectives. Also, at the same time, you should be determining your constraints. Are they geographic? Are you only able to accept an internship in New York City because you have a place to stay? What are your educational objectives of the internship? If you're getting academic credit, does this mean you have to do an internship that has specific tasks that you'll be carrying out or specific learning that you'll be doing? What is your savings? Do you have to do an internship that provides a stipend of a certain amount? Could you afford to accept an unpaid internship? So it's important to also be realistic about what those constraints are and try and find an internship that is best for you and also within those bounds. At the same time, you should also be clear about your personal expectations and your priorities. We find that some interns, they come to the US to check that they're on the right track by starting to apply some of their classroom knowledge. We also see that there are some who are more advanced and they're looking to develop more specific skills in a more narrow field or activity, or maybe expand their professional network through new mentorship. For some participants, they're just looking for a setting outside of their comfort zone that allows them to look at an industry they know well from a totally different perspective. So whatever your goals are, take stock of your training, take stock of your skills, your interests before you begin applying. And don't be afraid to reevaluate those goals if they change over your application process. It's really important to make sure that you're finding a position that fits you well. You're not just fitting in to a position that because it's open and because they're accepting international interns. So another important tip during your search preparation is to stay up to date with employers and hiring updates, industry news, all of that type of stuff. When you're searching for employers that you'd like to work with, it's best to first check and see who's hiring or who has hiring freezes. And especially right now, there's a lot of companies that are simply not hiring, or they may have paused their internship cohorts. So this will really help you to allocate the best use of your time as you start applying and you start doing research on organizations. There's a couple of websites, Levels and Candor are two online platforms that they assist individuals with salary negotiation, but over the last year, they've built up lists of companies who are currently hiring or still hiring or who have active hiring freezes due to the pandemic. So that's a really great resource just to look at and make sure that you're using your time wisely. If you'd really like to work for a particular company that isn't hiring though, keep checking or keep following up occasionally to see if there are any changes. You never know, when things are going to change, when a company updates their policies. So it's important to stay updated with those news, and just that you're aware of what's going on with some of those companies that you've specifically targeted and are really high on your list of places that you'd like to train at. And by following those companies that you're interested in training with, you can stay updated with other company news and updates that will maybe help you if you do get an interview, or you kind of have an idea of the other projects they're working on, so that you can figure out ways where you fit into to that company's vision and their mission, and how that aligns with your own skills and your own interests. But by following them maybe on LinkedIn, you can also see who else works there, and you can see if there's anyone in your network, if there's any one who's maybe graduated from the same university as you, who's had a similar career path. But overall, you'll learn more about the company, what they do, and how that all fits together. If you are looking to connect with some people specifically at certain companies, you can also you can invite people to this company who you find on LinkedIn, connect with them, maybe send them a personalized message and let them know what you're about and what you're looking for. Even if they aren't the right person to speak with about maybe any current internship openings, they can probably tell you who you should contact, maybe put you in contact with that person, or maybe even help you through an informational interview. So informational interviews are where you have basically a casual interview with an employee at a company to gain a little bit more background on their position, or a little bit more information about the company, what they're working on. Well, next week, actually, in our networking and mentoring session, we're going to talk more about informational interviews, but they're a great tool as you search for internships, because they help show initiative, and they can separate you from potentially other candidates who haven't gone out of their way to really learn about the company they're interested in training with. Another important thing to remember about search preparation is that any experience is good experience. So as part of your internship preparation, you should consider some of these stepping stones that you've had that will prepare you for an internship. Maybe you're hoping to do an internship this summer and are unable to because of the current climate of the world, but you can look and see what are some other skill building opportunities or educational opportunities that might be available to you. So, what other skills are in demand right now? Is it data analytics? Is it project management? Is it some of the hard skills we talked about a couple weeks ago, like blockchain or cloud computing, or skills, or skills, or sales? You can also see what research grants might be available, or scholarships, or financial aid, or COVID-19 relief measures. There's could be additional opportunities for you to add to your education right now at maybe a deferred cost, or at a lower cost. And if you have a bit of free time and you're looking for experience as you plan for your next step, you could look at some free or remote courses and certifications. Sites like Coursera offer these, for anyone to just take these courses for free. LinkedIn Learning is another option. There's typically a cost for some of those courses, but a lot of local and state academic institutions also have courses that interns can take to build up their experience before they graduate, or while they're still in school. It's also important to remember that there are transferable skills from pretty much any job. So real work experience will help you problem solve, help you communicate remotely, help you balance time-sensitive work. These are all common tasks that will come up in interim jobs or even seasonal jobs that can help support your career. So making sure that you're remembering that any experience is good experience and can help advance your career. In addition, being able to find work now could help show future employers that you're adaptable and you're able to overcome unprecedented challenges and kind of whatever the industry might throw at you. Some other places to gain some additional experience are by chatting with the Career Center at your university. They often will recruit alumni volunteers to help students on site for a couple days a week, or just to provide additional resources for those who are still in school. And there are times when a host might offer a student a position based on some job shadowing or different externships or volunteer work and things like that. So I think I would just remember that as you prepare your resume, as you prepare to apply, and any experience you have is something that's going to help you, and should be something that you kind of figure out a way to mention into your candidate profile as you apply for internships. So the chart on the next slide, we're just going to pause here and talk about how interns in the past have found internships in the US. And again, this data is compiled from 2019 and 2020 interviews with prospective applicants. Placement companies and universities account for roughly half of how participants found their internships. And these are probably the two most common routes for internship searches because they are successful. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Placement companies certainly make it easier if you don't have a wide network, but these opportunities can be a little bit less tailored to your specific interests, and they're subject to the connections of the placement company. Universities might have connections or listings that relate closer to your coursework, but it might be a bit harder to stand out to the host organization if everyone from your university has the same theoretical background. So the left half of this chart, the other half of how interns and trainees have found their placement is through a mix of close targeting within specific fields or networking, or even in some cases cold contacting. We're going to classify these two sides of this chart and the ways that interns found internships into either the open market, which is the right side, or the hidden market, which is the left side. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of each in the upcoming slides. But before we discuss those, I want to just pause and kind of talk about the benefits of self-source internships before we talk about the open and hidden market. Typically, we see a higher satisfaction rate for interns who have searched for and found their own internship once they do come to the United States and begin interning than those who were placed in an internship. And for this reason, I thought it would be useful to highlight the benefits of finding your own internship, because it might sound daunting, but it's really not that bad and worth the extra effort and time now to have an amazing experience once you do come to the United States. So the first benefit of a self-sourced internship is cost. You don't need to pay a placement fee because you're placing yourself, so you're saving thousands of dollars and time of what an international internship placement process might cost you. Self-placed interns, they save a lot of money by doing that work themselves. Interns who search for internships themselves are also able to find internships that better match their interests, their goals, and their desired learning objectives. There's a wide array of options available in the US, and by searching yourself, you aren't subject to the connections or the locations or the industry of the placement company. The internship search also contributes to important skills like independence and communication and some of the items we talked about earlier in this presentation. The ability to analyze varying offers and opportunities are all really important skills to practice for post-graduation life, as it's unlikely that someone's going to find your first job on your behalf. And for these reasons, US employers really do look favorably on interns who pursue their own internship and step outside of the box and take a chance, especially internship seekers who've done their research and are well prepared and know what they want. The experience of searching on your own also gives you better knowledge of the industry and helps you to make more direct connections with industry professionals, even if you don't get the opportunity to work directly within their organization. With that, I want to share a few more real anecdotes from recent participants who self-sourced their internships and just some creative ideas and ways to use social media, use your network, use informational interviews to find internships. And we see here one student who followed a specific company that he targeted via social media, someone who leveraged a visit from a host employer to her campus, someone who maximized previous time in the United States to expand his network and engage in informational interview. And then the last is a great example of someone who discovered their company by simply staying abreast of industry literature and making sure that they were familiar with what was going on in their field. So there are opportunities for internships. They're out there. They might be a little bit hidden, but we'll talk about how to access those internships right now. So like I said, there's internships on the open market and the hidden market, and we'll start with the open market for internships. The open market consists of all opportunities that can be accessed by an internship seeker. So this includes placement companies, this includes university databases, social media, online postings, websites like Indeed, internship and job fairs, press releases, announcements, stuff like that. These internships are typically easy to find and easy to access. There might be some restrictions. Maybe you need to be a student at a university to access the database, for example. But an internship on the open market is something that a company wants many people to know about. And they're posting these opportunities in multiple locations. They're sharing widely so that they can select the best applicant from a wide pool of candidates. And this makes the process more competitive due to the significant number of applications that a host might receive for one or only a few internship opportunities. So it can be a little bit harder to stand out and to negotiate your exact goals, especially during the application process. The other type of market for internship search prep is the hidden market. And these are opportunities that are not actively promoted by a company. A significant portion of the hidden market opportunities are accessed by networking. Professors, your family members, other students, friends. In one of the anecdotes on this slide, a choreographer. These contacts know of companies with the capacity for training or for relevant opportunities, and they can make that connection for you. In some cases, these companies haven't even advertised the opportunity or were not actively seeking an intern. And this is why some interns succeed in cold contacting organizations or even proposing self-designed internships. This is going to require more effort and an ability to maybe withstand rejection. These companies are not maybe actively promoting opportunities and may not have the capacity for taking on an intern. But sometimes, you never know. You never know what a company might be focusing on in the next few months or the next couple of years. So you're only going to find that out by reaching out to the company. And it's important to make sure that what you feel would be a benefit to the company is something that they also see as a value added. It's not always going to be the case. So like I said, you might need to have a little bit of a thicker skin when you're cold contacting organizations. But we wanted to highlight both of these options of search preparation so that you're reminded as an internship seeker not to confine your internship search by what you find online. The wider and deeper you cast your net, the more success you're going to have in finding your ideal internship. So I'm going to pause here for any questions that have come in just kind of about the search preparation. And then we're going to move into specific tips for searching for internships. So Abby, I'll turn it over to you if any questions have come in so far.
Yeah, we do have a few questions that have come in. A couple of them are kind of a bit more about timing and when they should start applying for these internships or searching. So someone asked, when would you suggest sending emails to businesses, keeping in mind the time frame? But I just want to give a few more specifics. And someone else asked, if they need to have a signed contract, by March of 2022 to qualify for a grant. When do they need to start looking, and when do they need to be in touch with our organization, with InterExchange?
Sure. So those are two good questions, I think, that pair really nicely. I'm glad you asked them together. The first would again, with the caveat that it depends, but I would say probably between 3 to 6 months is when you're going to want to start reaching out to organizations. I would try and get a sense of what their onboarding process looks like. So if March 22 is your deadline, I think when the school year starts next fall, you should probably start making some lists of organizations that you'd want to reach out to, and probably reach out before the holidays, maybe early December or late November. maybe even sooner if you're prepared for that and you know exactly, what you're looking for in an organization. On the InterExchange side of things, the average timeline of when someone applies to InterExchange for visa sponsorship to when they arrive in the United States is about 6 to 8 weeks. So we're pretty quick about reviewing your application, getting everything back to you, and we can usually do that in 10 calendar days, assuming that everything on file is correct. There might be a little bit of a wait at the US Embassy. You might want to give yourself a couple of weeks to book a flight at a cheaper rate. But I would say probably within that 3 to 6 month range is when you would start the process, and then give yourself at least 2 months for the actual paperwork of applying for visa sponsorship and a visa at the US Embassy.
Awesome. Another question is, if I graduate this year, can I apply for an internship?
Definitely. So you are eligible for 12 months after you graduate to apply for an internship. Once that eligibility expires, there's a sister program called the J1 traineeship program. So that's a little bit more advanced. So if the 12 months have passed, you could apply as a trainee. But what the trainee requires is that you have 1 year of previous work experience to build upon. So even if you miss that 12-month deadline, if maybe because of the pandemic or travel restrictions, you aren't able to come to the US, but you've been gaining some professional work experience in your home country, you can use that as justification for coming and advancing your knowledge and skill base in the US after that 1 year passes.
And what kind of internship fields can InterExchange sponsor? What kind of internship, J1 visa internship or trainee visas or in the field can they look for?
That's a great question. So there are 6 categories that InterExchange can sponsor, and this covers most internship fields. So the first is business and management and all business related areas, so marketing, accounting, stuff like that. Also the STEM, sciences, engineering, architecture, hospitality and tourism. The 4th area is law and public administration. 5th is communications, media, things like that. And the last area is arts and culture, which would be museum studies, library studies. I think fashion apparel design falls under that as well. Some of the areas that we can't sponsor are agriculture or health sciences, anything that would have patient contact. And then there are a few specific restrictions that we do have just on past experiences in specific fields that we would not allow someone to train in that area. So I'll actually send that in the follow-up message so everyone can kind of look through what our restrictions are. But a vast majority of organizations would fall under the allowable training that we would sponsor.
Great. And then just the last question about LinkedIn. So if a participant finds an internship through LinkedIn, would you suggest directly applying through that, or would you then go and look the company up on their website and apply that way?
That can be tricky. So I think that LinkedIn would be fine to apply through LinkedIn. If the company has a specific posting on their website, I don't think it hurts to apply that way instead. I wouldn't apply twice. What LinkedIn will typically do is take your information from your LinkedIn profile and kind of use that. There's a little bit more metrics that way. I think as long as your resume is getting in front of a hiring manager, it's fine. So see what you think is going to be easier. If there's something on their website where you can apply directly on their website, maybe that's the more direct way. If there's an email address, maybe that's going to be something that they'll check more than logging into LinkedIn and looking through a bunch of people that have submitted. One thing I would be careful about is if you do apply through LinkedIn, make sure that you're still uploading your own resume and your own CV, and you're not just relying on your LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure that it's formatted correctly and that it includes the right information, and that there's no search words or like technology that's going to skim your profile for specific keywords. So just make sure that if you do use LinkedIn, you're still giving them your full package as a candidate.
Yeah, and I would add that if you do apply through LinkedIn, make sure your LinkedIn profile is complete and that you have listed everything you can about yourself, so they have all that information to look at in addition to the cover letter and resume you're providing them with.
Absolutely, yeah. If you apply through LinkedIn, definitely go back. I think we have a slide about LinkedIn coming up, but definitely go back and watch our presentation from last week where we specifically talk about LinkedIn and your online presence. If you're going to be using those tools to apply, you want to make sure that your online presence is perfect and conveys you as a professional.
Okay, that was the last question.
Awesome, great. So with that, let's get into some of the specific tips for how to find an internship and what you should be working on. The first tip, I've mentioned this a couple times, but networking is really important. Networking is one of the best ways, if not the best way, to access the hidden market. Once you identify potential companies and fields, think about who you already know that can help make an introduction to these companies. Your network might lead to some obvious connections like past and present colleagues, maybe other students, your professors, but you might see some connections come in unexpected places. So it's important to make sure that you let everyone in your network know of your plans. If you're planning on interning in the US, bring it up in casual conversation that this is one of your goals, this is what you're working towards, this is what's new in your life. Add it to your LinkedIn profile, like Abby was talking about. Make sure that everything is all congruent and everything matches you as a person and kind of what you're looking for. In addition, make a list of targeted organizations that might have opportunities in the hidden market, and start reaching out to some of those organizations about internship proposals or even asking for informational interviews. You keep organized and follow up as it's appropriate. There are many ways to intentionally grow your network through targeted networking, informational interviews, seeking mentorship, things like that. There is also the option for cold contacting people. So cold calling or cold emailing is when you reach out to people or companies that you don't know at all and you pitch yourself. This is typically a sales technique, but that's exactly what you're doing. Cold contacting can maybe have a high rejection rate, but you'll need to maintain, again, a thick skin and be prepared that not every place that you cold call will have an opportunity or will even reply to your message. Informational interviews, like I mentioned just now, but this is an informal conversation that you can have with someone working in an area of interest to you. So it's a research tool that is kind of secondary to any preliminary online research that you've done. It's not a job interview, so the objective is not to find a job opening from this conversation. The idea is to get firsthand knowledge of the company, the industry, maybe some positions that are not available online. You can find out some career paths that you didn't know existed, get some tips and insider knowledge and information to how to prepare and land a position in the future, and again, intentionally building your network. And the last two stats here, the bullets really show the importance of your network. The National Association of Colleges and Employers shows that most employers recruit using their current and former interns. 93% of companies use current and former interns as a means of recruitment, and 80% of employers recruit through alumni referrals. So having that network and knowing someone in the company is really important, and this is really step one as you start your internship search process. And you can see from these two anecdotes on the slide how it helped both of these students find their internships. So tip number 2 is maintain a virtual impression and leverage your network online. So chances are you've already created accounts on social media like LinkedIn or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you haven't, that's the easiest step to creating a virtual impression and establishing your presence on networking sites and social media, and showcase your previous experiences and your skills and building your professional brand. It's important to establish your professional brand, again, in a way that's consistent through all of your online platforms, as social media is really all about telling your story and who you are as a person. So before you begin working on your social media profiles, you want to think of a statement that is unique to your personal brand and what you want to convey across those different platforms. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is polished. Make sure that you have a professional background photo, that you've created a headline, that you've added a summary, relevant work experience, skills. If you have any recommendations that people would be willing to give you, make sure those are those are asked for and on your LinkedIn profile. And then start connecting with industry professionals. Comment on maybe things that they've shared that are important, or share things that you see that are work related that you would want people in your network to know that you're up to date with, and you can convey yourself as a thought leader. Creating and building your online presence will really allow you to document and exhibit any work that is ultimately presented on your resume. You can use samples from class projects or from previous work projects if they relate to the positions that you're seeking. It's your body of work, so it's definitely important to include anything that you would in your portfolio on your LinkedIn profile as well. Any audio and visual representations of your research, any projects and experiences that you've done, make sure all of that is included and is part of your virtual impression. And we talked about the plug, but if you're unsure of how to start this process, go back and watch the recording of our session that our colleague Fatima Rodriguez did last week regarding LinkedIn profiles. Tip number 3, if you haven't done this already, visit your university career center. Every university is a bit different, so I can't speak in specifics on this slide, but if you don't have a large network, this is a really great place to start your internship search. And most, if not all, universities have dedicated support staff that can help you to build your network, to build your online presence, to serve as a career coach and help you to break down things that might be overwhelming, and help understand your career development a little bit more, reflecting upon your interests, your skills, your values, companies that match those, and help you to explore career options that align well with those attributes. Career Center staff can also help you to create a direction of where you'd like to go in your career. For example, if you're fairly creative, incredibly organized and a good communicator, but have no idea what any of this means in the workplace, the career services staff can help you to connect the dots and realize some potential opportunities. Maybe you'd make a great project manager or a great account manager or something of that sort. But also take advantage of any university connections that the Career Center can help bridge for you. Maybe alumni or people who've interned or work in the company that's on your targeted list. And they can help you to construct the right message to these people as you maybe do some cold outreach or ask them for informational interviews. They can help craft what you would want to convey in that initial outreach if you're asking them to give a little bit of their time to help you professionally. And how can you make that ask in a way that that seems natural and also professional? Our 4th tip is to scour all of the career and internship search engines and websites. There are hundreds of different online search engines in the United States and worldwide for internships, apprenticeships. The following websites on this slide are just a small sample of what's out there, but we did break them up into different areas. And again, we'll share this presentation with everyone so you can have all of these websites at your disposal. But there's multiple types of websites specifically for accounting or nonprofit management, political science. There's a few websites that I've looked on personally when I've been in between jobs that aren't even on this list. So there are many out there. Another place that we've included for internships is the InterExchange host employer database. So this is a great place to begin searching for internships. It's a list of all previous employers who have already hosted a participant through InterExchange, and therefore they've been vetted by us, by a sponsor. And you can see who's willing to share their information and who's willing to potentially host another intern in the future. Not all employers are going to be hosting at that time, but it's a great place to start reaching out to some host employers and again, building your network, finding out what opportunities are available and maybe learning a little bit more of what the landscape is of your industry in the United States. And then the bullets all the way on the right of this slide are just some general internship search engines that are also great to review and see what's available. Our 5th tip is to contact some globally focused companies. So multinational enterprises are likely to already be familiar with the visa process for interns, and it's unlikely that you'll be the first person to inquire about an international internship. So you'll have a little bit of the work already done for you, and maybe you can begin an internship in your home country and then transition to a second internship in the United States. I think as we saw in one of the earlier slides, about 6% of interns train with a branch of the company outside the United States before they come to the US to finish their internship or to intern here in the US. Some large companies also run summer programs each year, so international students can join the summer cohort, and it's a benefit to the company. You know, your perspective is going to add variety and maybe some new methodologies and techniques to the group. There's also fixed dates, which means you can plan backwards and maybe guesstimate what next year's cycle might be. So related to that question we had before about timeline, you can see, do they typically open up applications on October 1st and they tell who's been hired by April 1st. You know, you can figure out a little bit more what that timeline might be if there is a yearly cohort that happens annually. Some multinational enterprises also specifically seek out international internships. They might be even recruiting in your home country. So you can well, first of all, make sure if they are visiting your campus or any campuses nearby or any internship fairs that you're attending. But even if they aren't, you can reach out and maybe take the initiative and contact the recruiter with your resume and tell them about your interests. And you know, they're certainly going to be interested in reviewing your CV because they're actively seeking international interns. So by you coming to them, you're making the recruiter's job even easier. The sixth tip is to create your own internship. So just because a company hasn't posted an internship position on its website, it doesn't mean that they don't offer internships. In fact, most do or probably would be willing to do if the right proposal from a prospective intern came to them. So demonstrating an interest in interning or training with a company, it shows that you've done your research and that you're a motivated candidate. And based on the information you gather about the company that you'd like to train with, you can prepare a written document outlining an internship that you'd like to do. You might want to suggest a project for a particular department or a position for a particular need that you think the company has. And while flexibility is important, it's also important to be specific in what you'd like to do and the skills that you have to offer to the company. A company is more likely to offer an internship to someone who has a plan and is goal oriented, as opposed to someone who will, you know, do whatever the company wants. It's going to be easier if you already have that focus developed. And you can send your proposal via email to the company. If you see a specific person on the website that would be the appropriate person to send to, or if you've already made contact with a specific department or with HR. But you can also check the company's website to see if they have a contact us section, or you know, the best way to submit your proposal to see who's going to handle any of these type of internship requests. But remember that proposing and developing an internship does take a bit of time, and it's just one of the ways to find an internship in your field. So again, don't be discouraged if you don't hear back from an employer or if you don't receive positive responses. Many companies don't have the resources or time to hire an intern at any point of the year, so it doesn't mean that they won't be able to offer something in the future or refer you to someone else who could hire you. There's a lot of positives. There's more positives that can come out of reaching out with your own internship than negatives that could happen from that. Tip number 7 is to check for new developments. So if you found a really useful listing site or a really interesting company, make sure that you're staying updated with their website. Refresh the listings for new postings every few days, even more so if it's for a general search engine, like some of those in that far right column a few slides ago. Set up a Google alert with keywords or companies that might be related to your internship search so that you're getting all of the news and you're getting the updates as soon as they're coming through about what opportunities might exist. And once you've identified these opportunities, make sure you apply well in advance of the deadline. There's no guarantee that the posting is going to stay open until the date listed. If they find the right candidate, the company might decide that they're going to close the posting a little bit early. So don't rush your application and submit something sloppy, but make sure that you are proactive. Make sure that you read the instructions so you show you're eager, but you're also organized, and be aware of your own timeline. It's certainly fine to follow up if you haven't heard anything in over a month and you need that contract by March of 2022. But if the website says that they're not going to make a decision until June, you have to understand that that's also going to be a timeline that just doesn't match what your own personal timeline is going to be. Also, use some of the online resources to find out what it's like to work or to train with some of these companies. Glassdoor, LinkedIn, there's many types of websites that can help you understand what training would be like, what the length of time to apply, what the interview process is like. Some companies are really quick. Others have a more measured, drawn-out approach for onboarding new interns. It's also a good idea to loop back within your network and see what updates they might be aware of, or if there's any new developments to your skill set that you want to just mention in case that changes any decisions from any companies or anyone that your network might know that they could refer you to. And the last tip that we have is to stay organized. If you're submitting many applications or multiple applications a day, it might be really hard to keep track. So make sure that you put together a spreadsheet of each internship you apply to, some important details, including the internship description, the deadline, whether you decided to submit your application or not, the version of the cover letter or the version of your resume that you used, maybe the point of contact at the organization. I would also take a screenshot or download the specific internship posting. This will be helpful if the company later takes it down, or if you want to reference it before your interview. Or maybe they post an internship really similar and you want to compare if it's the exact same thing, or if it's a little bit different than the original posting. Either way, you'll have the information safely stored on your own computer. It also is a good idea to keep a running list of companies that you seriously consider but chose not to apply to. And this might be helpful to track down why you decided not to apply for the internship, especially if you see something at the same company pop up a few months later. You can save yourself a bit of time because, oh yeah, compensation wasn't within what I was looking for, or they required proficiency in French or something of that nature. These are two really excellent anecdotes that I want to end the presentation with. I haven't read all of them as we've gone through, and I hope that you've been able to look at some of them as I was talking, but I really want to focus on these two. We have one intern who specifically zeroed in on Philadelphia, and he approached nearly 24 companies there. So he reached out to each one and kept the details organized so that he wasn't sending a resume address to the wrong company, etc. But another intern who she interviewed with multiple high-end restaurants, she weighed her options and she chose one specific host. For both, I don't think that finding an internship would be possible without staying organized because of how many different people they had reached out to, how many different versions of their resumes they had sent out, how many things they had going on. I think it was key for both of them to stay organized and make the best decision and choose the best internship for themselves because they had so many things going on. With that, wow, it's just about 3 o'clock, so we're going to wrap up. Any questions that you do have, please type them away in the chat box and we'll stay on as long as there's questions. But I do, while people are typing their questions, I want to highlight some of the upcoming webinars we have. Next week, we're going to talk about developing mentors, networking, kind of that mentor-mentee relationship. And then in March, we have a session specifically on interview tips and how to get an internship through a great interview, whether it's remote or in person. Abby will be running some sessions on US workplace culture, English in the US workplace, and then we have a participant panel who will provide advice at the end of March for their own experiences and their own time in the United States. And some of the past webinars we've mentioned are about LinkedIn, cover letters, building in-demand skills, and then a general session on specifically how to apply for the J1 intern and trainee visa, or trainee visa, depending on your situation. So with that, we could just go to questions. And Abby, if there's any questions that have come in, I'm happy to answer them now.
We only have one or two. So one question we do have is, because of COVID-19, some companies are still working remotely. Are the interns or participants able to come over and to the US and be in the US and do an internship where they're training from home?
So because the J1 programs are designed for cultural exchange, there's not an ability to do a solely remote program. Part of the regulations require continuous on-site supervision. That being said, if you do come to the United States and there's maybe an outbreak in your office and you need to work remotely for a short period of time, or there's some flexible scheduling and you're working 3 days a week in the office and maybe 1 or 2 weeks from home, or your supervisor is, or something like that, 3 days, I should say, that's okay. But you wouldn't be able to come to the United States to do a solely remote internship just because of the regulations of this program. You'd have to wait until your organization is fully back in the office.
And then we did just have a question come in, just kind of about the requirements for the visa. So we gave all these tips about looking for an internship. Do they have to have this internship or the traineeship already before they come to the U.S.?
Yes, that's another specific part of the program. So you can't come to the US without the internship. You would have to apply for your visa with your host company, so the embassy can kind of make that determination of if your internship matches your coursework, and that would be your justification for coming to the United States. You'd have to be looking for an internship while you're outside of the US. I think some of the examples did mention people who had found internships while they were in the US, which could be a possibility if you come on an ESTA or you come on a tourist visa for a week or two, and during that time, maybe you interview with a company. That's totally fine, but you would have to have your internship position kind of set in stone before you even apply to the embassy for a J1 visa.
Great. We don't have any other questions at the moment, so I think we are all set.
Great. Well, if anyone does have any questions, our information is right here on this slide. Please don't hesitate to contact us at training@interexchange.org. But thank you everyone for your attention, and I hope you have a good evening or morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world.